Hey guys, Anthony from Newy Mods. Just thought I'd show you how to chip a PlayStation 1. It's a fairly easy process. There's only 7 wires. The chip you can get online on my website. The chip that I use is an MM3 chip that I code myself onto a PIC chip. So you can pick them up from us on www.newymods.com.au for about $10. Alright, today we're going to chip a PS1. The model number is the SCPH7502. When this model in particular is chipped, you can play both NTSC and PAL games, so you're not restricted. That's why I like chipping these models and above, because with the 5502s and below, to be able to play NTSC games on a PAL unit, you need to use a special cable, an RGB cable. Alright, so the first step with chipping 7502 or any of the PS1s in particular is you take out the 6 screws on the bottom. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws. So we'll pull them out. And just set the screws aside. Once the screws are out, we flip it back over. It's really bad video at the moment. Flip it back over, and you should be able to just hold on either side and lift the top off. Put the top aside. So in here, we've got the PS1 power supply board with the on-off switch and the reset. Obviously got the CD drive and the motherboard underneath this plate. Motherboard's what we need to actually get to, so we can solder some wires onto it and connect it up to the chip. So what we need to do now is remove the CD drive, and to remove the CD drive it's fairly simple. Just be careful of these plugs because they can be brittle because of the age of them, but this is the power plug, so you just pop the power plug out, and this ribbon here, which is the data ribbon for the drive. So once they're unplugged, basically just pick it up and put it off to the side. Okay, so once we're into this area, we need to get into this plate, but to do that we need to unplug the ribbon off the controller ports, and that's pretty simple. We just pull that out and push that up out of the way. And the power, because we've got this white clip here, I just pull both sides of the power plug off. So you just pull both of them off and just let that sit there. Now to get this plate off, fairly simple. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. So we'll pull the 4 screws out. And once the 4 screws are out, this plate should just lift off. Just be careful, but it might be a little bit jammed, but it should just lift straight out of there, just like that. Just put that off to the side, and now here we have the motherboard exposed, and this is what we're going to be working on. But to work on it, what we're going to do is pull it out of the case. It just gives us a bit more movability, and we can access the points that we need to access a lot cleaner. So what we need to do to take this board out, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws at the back, so we'll just pull them out. Okay, now that those screws are out, we should be able to just lift this motherboard very carefully out, just like that, and the metal will stay in there. So we can toss the bottom of the PS1 out the way for now, because our main focus now is going to be on the motherboard. This is the PU22 motherboard. I don't know if you can see that. It's the PU22 motherboard. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to look up the MM3 installation diagram for this particular motherboard, and I've got that on my screen at the moment. I can put that in the links down below the video. Be able to access them there. Alright, now I'll just go and prepare the chip, and I'll be back. Alrighty, so we're back. We've got the chip prepared here. So this is the chip. This is what it actually looks like. It's a simple 8-pin PIC chip, but I can program these up for you guys and send them out for about $10 from the website. Alright, so the first step to getting this done, before I start, I'll go through a couple of the tools I've got. I've got a flux pen, a solder sucker, some surface mount tweezers to help with moving little cables and things around, and a solder wick just in case we need it. Okay, so the first step we need to do is we need to remove this protective sheet. Now, this protective sheet's not on all models, but it is obviously on this model. It needs to be removed, and to remove that we just desolder the mounting points. To do that, it's fairly simple. Just get some solder and heat up the soldering iron. Now, with the soldering iron, you need to be very careful of the temperature. Don't use a home job soldering iron. You need to use something with a fine point, and something that's temperature controlled. Because if you start heating these boards up too hot, you actually lift the tracks off the board, and you do all sorts of damage to the board and to the surrounding components and things like that. So it's fairly important to get the soldering right, and as Josh would say as well, you get the soldering right, and you won't do any damage. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to desolder these points. So just a bit of solder on the soldering iron. Apply the soldering iron a little bit. Give it a tiny bit of solder, and you should be able to just lift that point straight off the motherboard like that. It's okay to bend it, but you just need to get that out of the way, and we just do that with all the other points as well. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points, 7, 8 points that we need to do. I just like to go in order, so just the same way. Bit of solder on the soldering iron tip, and heat that pad up a little bit, just enough so it gets that solder melted enough to pop it out. You should be right to just go around and do the rest of it. Okay, so once those points are all desoldered, we can put that plate aside because we don't actually need it for now. So now we've got all the ICs exposed. This is where we have to be pretty careful not to splash solder or anything onto the board, so we don't want to destroy any of the pins on the ICs. There's some ICs there with a lot of pins. If you get solder in them pins, it's an absolute nightmare sometimes to get them out. Alright, so what we need to do then is we need to go off our diagram. The diagrams, as I said before, will be in the links below. And this is our chip that we need to install. So the diagram actually tells you where to put the chip as well, so you know where to run the cables to and things like that. So the diagram for the 7502 says to put the chip just here, which is, just move it over, which is basically just there. So we put the chip just in here. We can run all the wires to it. Obviously we need to put something underneath the chip so it's not sitting directly on the pads of the motherboard that are exposed, otherwise we're going to have all sorts of different problems. So now what we need to do is we need to start soldering some wires. Now I use this wire for wiring the IC or our chips to the boards. It's actually really good wire. Been using it for a long time, since I was in working for with electrical engineers in Thornton a few years ago. They swear by it as well. It's really good. It's just kind of wrapping wire. Got it from JCar. It's about $16-17 a roll. It's really easy to work with, and it's really fine wire, so it can fit into tight areas, and it can also bend around things really easily. So just go through each of the points now. So we've got I'll just go over them first. We've got point 1, which is up here in this area. Point 2, there's no point 2 at all. Point 3 is down here in this area. Point 4 is all the way over here, just here in front of this one here. And then we've just got point 5 and 6, they're down underneath here. Point 7 is underneath this IC here, and point 8 is over here on one of these pads. So we'll go through them one by one. Fairly simple. Let's strip some wire and get them on there. So I like to leave a tiny bit of wire out, just cut off the end, just so it's just enough to get into the IC, onto the pad or wherever it needs to go. So we'll do point 1 first. Now point 1 is it's up here in front of this here, this little black box here, little component here. It's actually in front of that, on that pad. So being nice and careful, get our solder and a clean soldering tip. Lower heat, because we don't want to pull these pads off the boards, and just apply the soldering iron to the pad and just dab a little bit of solder on it like that, just to get it ready. And all we need to do is just get the wire, shape it into there. Nice and neat. Just going to get the right angle for these guys. Kind of difficult. Just like that, and we've got a nice connection onto the board, which isn't going to go anywhere. So that's connection number 1, and that actually corresponds to point 1 or pin 1 on the chip that you'll get from us. So if we need to put the chip in this area here, we want to sort of get a good orientation of the chip as well, or a good point where it can sit and it won't fly away, or it won't fall off the board or get in the way of anything. So what we need to do now is just run each wire to the chip to where we're going to actually install it. Just making sure it's in the right spot. Just down here. That should be fine just there. Just trim it off. And we'll get that wire onto pin number 1. Just take the outer coat off the wire. We want to get pin number 1 be extra careful when you're putting solder on the pins of the chips. You don't want to keep the soldering iron on the chip for too long because you will cook it, and then you'll be needing to order new ones. So just again, just a bit of solder on that chip, on the pin. Pin 1 done. Tighten it up a bit. Okay. Just make sure that we get a good join. It's not too bad, and we'll touch that up. Better. Okay, so there's pin 1 done. Now obviously pin 2 doesn't have any connection, so we go on to pin 3. Pin 3 is just below, so I see here. Now it is on the pad just in front of this first resistor in these 3 series of resistors here. So we've got this resistor just here. So it's just that one. Okay, so and again we just get the soldering iron with a clean tip. And just locate the right pad. Apply some heat to the pad. Just sap it with a bit of solder. We'll do the same with this one. Just get a tiny bit of wire. Solder the wire to the pad. The clean tip. Always keep that soldering iron tip clean. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get a clean and proper solder join. And there's our second wire, and that goes to pin number 3. Pop our chip back into place. Cut off the wire. Expose the wire out. This goes on to pin number 3. So just put that over there. Bit of solder on the IC leg on the pin. Being careful again not to keep the heat on there for too long because you will cook it. Just like that. And slap that onto there like that. And there's pin number 2 soldered up. Okay, sorry, pin number 3 soldered up. So now the next one is pin 4. Now pin 4 goes all the way over the other side. Just need to make sure we get it right. Now pin 4 is over here, in front of this guy here. So we just look down here, we've got a resistor I think in front of that there, yes, and we go off that pad that's right in front of it, which is just there. If you're looking for numbers, it's FB601, and it's just above that that resistor, which is that pad just there. So again, just a bit of solder and a clean soldering iron, and we want to apply some heat to that pad and just zap it like that. As I said, this is the longest wire of all of the wires to install. It's still easy, so all we need to do is just solder that down, clean soldering iron tip. Just want to zap that in like that. And we've got a nice join. Now this wire here, just be creative when you're running it over. Run it over in the way of any of the components that needs to move, like the CD drive. Well, that's kind of hard if you're going to do that. It's kind of hard to get it in the way. So I'm just going to go around there, probably around that side of the reset, and I'll just cut it off there. Probably a good idea too to get into practice of doing a neat and clean install, because if you go onto the PS2s, they're a real pain in the butt. If you don't have the right clean installation methods, you'll find that the chips don't actually work. So it's kind of important to get it clean and right the first time. I'm not really being that clean with this install, but it's just to show you guys how the chips actually install on the boards. So pin 4, solder it up. Put that onto there. And there's pin 4 ready to go. So I've left a little bit of excess wire. I'm going to be able to shape that around later. I mean, it doesn't really matter too much because it's out of the way, just like that, it's out of the way sort of thing. I don't know if you can see that, but it's sort of out of the way. It goes over to pin 4. Okay, the next one will be pin 5. Okay, pin 5 comes to, pin 5 is actually down here underneath this guy, the CXD 2938Q chip. It's down underneath that. And it's actually on, well, it's actually under a via. A via is a hole that goes from one side of the board to the other, and it's just underneath that via, just here, which is that one just there. So what we'll do is we'll get some solder and a clean solder tip, and we'll just zap that on, just make sure we've got the right point. Just that one there. Zap it a little bit. Okay, some more wire. And the same thing goes. Just want to get that wire onto the board nice and neatly, using just the right amount of heat, not too much. Not too little. There's our solder joint. So this one here goes up to pin 5, and that's on the opposite side of the chip. So I don't know if you're aware, you probably are anyway, but the chips are labelled pin 1 to 4 and then 5 to 8, and 8 is actually opposite pin 1. So what we need to do is we need to run this down to the back of the chip like this. And flip this chip over, straighten these legs out. Okay, so pin 5 is opposite pin 4, which is down here. So pin 5 is this one at the back. Just want to get some solder onto that. It's again being very careful not to heat up the chip too much. So we don't want to cook the chip. So apply some heat to the pin. Now just thread it underneath here so it's out of the way. Bend it up. Okay. Heat this one up. There's our joint. And there's pin 5 done. Okay. So now we're looking at pin 6. Pin 6 comes off very close to pin 5. It actually comes off down here. Where are we? We've got the 2 capacitors, I think they are. And then directly above it there's a pad. We want to come off that pad just there, pad 53. So again, get some solder, clean soldering tip. And we want to get onto pad 53. Just making sure that's right. Pin 53, it's actually next to 52 there. Heat it up, double solder, install our wire. So you can see it's a fairly easy process. It's even easy really to get hold of the chips now that I'm selling them on the website locally in Newcastle. Usually get them out to you the same day as well, so or you can come and pick them up. It's up to you. We're also going to have our own in-house made and designed GameCube chips shortly, based on the Xeno chip. They'll be available soon. I've just got to finalise the PCBs for them ones, and they'll be out on the market as well, so you'll be able to pick them up as well while you're here. Okay, so we get this pin, this pad heated up, get that nice solder joint. Okay, now this is pin number 6. Pin number 6 is easy, it's just next to pin number 5. Trim off some wire. We'll get this soldered up on the IC. So clean soldering tip, solder, apply some heat to pin 6, get some solder onto there, pop it underneath where pin 5 where the wire 5 goes, bend it around so they can run directly together. There's pin 5 on there, nice and tight. Sorry, pin 6. Okay, and then pin 7, or pad 7, we need to come in from up the top here. Pin 7 comes off this pad just here, this big one just here, next to IC304, it's just here. So again, clean soldering tip, bit of solder, bit of heat. I want to move them wires a little bit so don't touch on anything, just like that. Get some more wire. Connection on the board. Now this one is pin 7. Pin 7 doesn't really have to run that far, so there's not going to be much wire. So I'll run it underneath the chip for now. Always tidy these wires up later anyway. It's just a matter of getting them on there and making sure there's enough wire to orient the chip and move the chip and tidy up the wiring as you go. Just pop that up underneath there, like so. This is pin number 7, so we want to apply some heat to pin 7 with the clean soldering tip. Not much heat on the chip. Apply a bit of heat to pin 7. Bit of solder. Pop the wire up. We're almost done. Got one more wire to go, so there's only 7 wires to install. It's fairly simple. Usually fairly quick as well if you're not recording it. But okay, so pin 8. Now pin 8 is probably the easiest one, especially on this model. It's one of these big pads over here, really big pads just here. I think it's CL706. It's got written next to it. It's just a really big pad. Still don't apply too much heat to it, even though it's a bigger pad. You don't want to apply too much heat to it. You should still risk damaging it. So we're going to heat up this pad, CL706, bit of solder on the soldering iron, and heat the pad up a little bit. And just like that, get a bit of solder on there. Okay, get this wire ready. So pin 8 is very simple. Wire 8. Just pop some solder under there. Pop the wire in. And pin 8 is obviously the one that's opposite pin 1. So just want to chop that off. Pin to install now. Just a little bit of solder. The clean soldering iron on pin 8. Just come around. A little bit of heat. Make sure we've got all them connections nice and neat. Then we can go ahead, flip the chip over a little bit, nice and carefully, and just chop off any of the pins that you can chop off. If you can't chop them off, that's okay. You can tidy them up. Okay, now very carefully, what we want to do is just fold these pins out and away from the chip like that. So they run like a spider. Spider legs out, just so when we mount it down onto the motherboard, we don't have anything touching on the motherboard. You've got to be very careful not to touch anything on the motherboard. Reattach this wire, just to cut it. I want to cut the pad off. Redo pin number 1. Pin number 1 comes from here. Nice and neat. Okay, so there's our chip installed on the board. Now it's just a matter of making sure that it's going to be tidy when it fits in here. Now the guide says to put it just here, so that's where I put it. Just make sure that you clear all of the workings of the CD drives and things like that. So now that that's done, I'll just grab some tape. So what I like to do is I like to get one of these labels and stick it around the chip, just like that. It just saves it from touching on components that it shouldn't touch on, things like that. So we just sticky tape, oh, it's not sticky tape, it's just a label, and that ensures that the chip isn't ever going to touch on anything. And it's just like that. It's nice and neat. It's out of the way. Just one other thing that I do too is I just write down on it who installed it and the date. So it's UE Mods Anthony 0411097043, and today's date, which is 17th of the 11th. Doesn't need to be really neat. Not many people are going to see it, but it's always nice to do a good job. So those wires aren't too bad there. Looks kind of tidy, looks kind of easy, and it's all done. So now we've got to get this unit back together and give it a test. So the first step to getting it back together is bring over our base again. Bring out our base again. Put the motherboard back into place. One other thing that we didn't actually do too is we didn't reinstall this this plate. By all means, if you want to, you can. I don't normally reinstall them. It's not really a major problem at all. If you want to reinstall it, go right ahead. But actually, I'll reinstall it now to show you. But there is one point that I can't reinstall because I've got the chip there, so it's just a matter of pruning that off. It's fairly simple, just even with a pair of side cutters, just chop it off, and then it's out of the way. But yeah, easy job to reinstall. It's just a matter of lining it up to where it used to sit. Make sure it's straight first. Line it up to where it used to sit, like that. And it's just a matter of running around and zipping up them solder points again. So just heat the soldering iron up a bit. Just heat the pads up. Just as easy as that. And it's attached. So go around and do the rest. As I said, I don't normally put these back on, but I mean, if you want to put it back on, go for it. Sometimes they can be stubborn. Just pop a bit more solder onto it, just to give it that little bit more heat transference. Just like that. Just be careful not to get any of our chip wires, so we don't have to do that again. If they're a little bit stubborn, just add a bit more solder. that's installed there, nice and neat. It holds the chip down, that's not too bad. And the next step is to get these screws in. So we just to remember which screws are which, just line it up and you can see that there's various screws that go through the bottom. There's also screws that go in under here. By memory there's 3. I'm going to get all them back in. Pop in the 3 screws. 1, 2, I believe. Just making sure. The last one goes into this one here. This black one just here. I think there's one more. Yes, there is. There's 4 screws under here that have to go in, my apologies. Just this one here. As you can see too, they're marked with white arrows, the ones that need to actually go in. At this stage you can see the white arrows just above the screw holes. Okay, the next step is we need to pop this back over here. Make sure that it all fits in nice and neat with the chip in there. Make sure that there's no wires under any of the pads that the chips sit, the chip that's connected to the chip. You don't want to screw this down onto a wire and then have it snap a wire or something off the chip, because then the customer's not happy. And they will come back and they will be unhappy with your services. And we don't need that. Okay. So we've got 1 screw there. Pop in all these screws and they come out. Making sure we get them in the right place. There's this one screw up here into the wrong spot, which goes here. Screw on the pan. There's that plate back on. Okay, the next step is to install all our wiring. So the controller port gets plugged back in. That. Nice and easy. Pop in our wires. Okay. So that's done. The next step is the CD drive. CD drive's nice and easy. Just make sure you've got it lined up onto the pins. That. Just plug in the power. Plug in the data ribbon. Like so. The last step, but not the least step. Pop the top cover over. Pop in the 6 screws at the bottom. There we have it. So now the next step is to test it. So we just plug in some cables, power, AV, plug in a controller so we can test the controller and things like that. So the first step that we want to do here, first thing we want to do here is we just want to test to make sure that a normal game will load, so not a chip game. You can see that there's my screen, there's the diagrams there that we've just followed. Okay, just change it over to our screen that we need, which is, I believe, AV2. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to test a normal game. I test it with Smackdown 2. Borrowed it from my brother. Pop it into the drive. Power it up. Make sure that it runs and make sure that the controller still works. Things like that. And when it gets to this stage, it's obviously loading the game. So we have, it's loading.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is proof. Anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation.
Okay, so just wait till we get into the game to make sure the controls work. And they do. So you can see that works. Okay, so the next step is we just power it down and we pop in one of our burnt games. So this is, actually we'll try it with Driver 2 first. So this is Driver 2, NTSC version of Driver 2. Pop it in there. Power it up. Just need to make sure that it loads the game, and obviously it has. Just go into this stage. There you have it. You can see that it's in colour. So this particular model, PS1, as I said, plays colour for plays PAL and NTSC games. Models underneath it. Some models require RGB cables, and the other models like the Slims, they won't play NTSC, or PAL Slim won't play an NTSC. Like the 102s and things like that. Sorry about the ridiculous quality of the camera. I'm gonna probably source a new camera soon. There you have it. We've got our chip PS1 playing burnt Driver 2 NTSC games. So once again, if you have any questions, chuck them down in the comments. If you want to buy some chips off us, just go to our website. Our website will also be in the comments. You pick them up for about $10, and as you can see, you can install them pretty easily. We obviously don't take responsibility for anything that goes wrong while you're installing your own, and we recommend that if you aren't confident with doing any of the steps that we had in the video, please get us to install it for you. We're local, so and we only charge an extra $10 to install. So yeah, there's the video. Enjoy.